Welcome to Tears for Tiny. My name's Rob Cott, and my next step to building a tiny home is understanding my why. My why is an important part of the tiny home build because it influences the decisions I make. So this episode, I'll be sharing how I explored my motivations to help me prioritize what's important. I'm a creative building my first tiny home, and this is episode 2. My motivations have become clearer to me over the past few months. I've been sketching ideas out, watching videos online, talking with tiny living friends and strangers, and going to events. Trying to find big reasons that would prevent me from following through with the tiny home. For example, money, if my budget wasn't big enough and I couldn't finish, or if there was no place to park the tiny home. I want to be somewhere that suits my lifestyle. And so I sat down with a friend who knew me well to write down all my motivations and reasons for building this tiny home. These are some of the ones we came up with and some extra ones that came to mind while I was typing this out. Once I had enough, I was able to categorize them into those colored headings you can see. While I was thinking about the motivations, pragmatic things kept coming up, things that the design needs, like solar power and a fridge. And so I popped in another heading called pragmatisms and tagged it into awesome quality life. And also created a wants section for things that weren't super essential but would be kind of cool to have. While all these motivations are super important and will influence the design, I bolded the ones that I thought were most important. This made it much easier to read later, and then I also reordered the bolded items to the top of the list. If you'd like to have a closer squiz, I've left a link to the PDF in the description. To summarize, my top 3 motivations are me living in something I've built by my hands and feeling good about it, the cost, me reducing rent and having no mortgage, and thirdly, the ease of being able to move anywhere every year or two. Australia's a pretty big place, and I could even go international. Now that I had my motivations down and ordered, I had a better idea of what I was creating. This is where the fun stuff comes in. I'm gonna quickly create a mock-up of the tiny home in 3D, but before I can show you this process, I have to overcome something very quickly. If you've ever watched 3D modeling, you'll know that it's really hard to watch because it's way too fast and it looks like this. So to solve this problem, I had to create another screen that I could screen record. I don't have another physical screen because my setup looks like this. Just a bit compact to fit another screen. And so I found something I thought was super cool where my GPU can create a second screen. A ghost screen, or a fake screen if you will. Pow! And finally, I could get into the fun bit, modeling. Let's get into it. Every time you start a new scene, it's always a good idea to throw in a human and trees for perspective, so to make sure that you're modeling at the right scale. Once I got that done, it was time to make the container. I just drew a box and then fixed up the dimensions afterwards. You can see the table of internal dimensions on the top right. I threw a truck in there for good measure because the container will probably sit on a truck. I'm now dividing the container up into equal parts to find out where the skylight's going to go. Just reminding you that even though this may seem specific, this is still just a mock-up and the measurements are loose. Next, I model the doors that come with the container. I'll probably keep the doors open most of the time, with the option of closing them for transport and security. With the big exterior elements done, it was time to jump onto the interior. Decisions are coming from 3 places right now. The first place is the motivations PDF I just showed you, and the second and third bits are coming from the ideas and sketches I've done over the last few months. I started out thinking about wet areas, like the kitchen and bathroom. This just means that the floor itself can get wet and has drainage. This helps me decide where walls can go, and also a central wall that I can create plumbing that's easier to maintain. Before I get back to the bathroom design, I thought I would fill out the main part with furniture that is less fixed. Once I've got this done, I can think about the parts that are fixed, like the toilet and shower. So there I just made a bed that can drop down. I'm adding vertical timber slats so that I can fix things to them, which also gives shape to this mock-up. To add even more shape, I threw a floor in, and then fired off a render to get a feel for what it roughly looked like. Next, I filled out the living area and kitchen with a few essentials. Now, the next part is very important because in order for me to keep designing and not get stuck, which is very common when you design in 3D, I just threw a bunch of shelves around and boxes and just tried to see how it felt. I also threw in a side table, some chairs, and a sofa. I then took another render and this is what we've got. That's good enough for the living room right now. Let's get back to the bathroom. I drew a box where I thought the shower would go, and then I jumped online to get a toilet. Most of the big manufacturers have toilets ready to download for free. I could now fill out the shower area, but I realized something, that these high cube containers are very tall. So I decided to upraise the toilet and shower area so I could do storage underneath, and also the toilet will have access for when it's composting. Another reason is my total noobness at waterproofing in the real world, so if it does leak, I'll be able to see it. I will be using a small washer and dryer combo, which will sit in the bathroom or the wet area. And finally, I had to play with bulkheads for a bit of fun and to see where larger blocks could be placed to create a nicer internal feeling. So this is where I got to in the end. Now that I've finished with the mock-up, I have a better idea of how to design in tiny space. Next episode, I'm going to research the different species of tiny home to find the one that best suits me. The pros and cons, that sort of thing, what they look like, and how much they cost. Whoa, that's blown out. There we go. As per usual, I would love any feedback or ideas you have. Use the comments. I've got an email in the description. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys soon.